Let me get rid of all this stuff and we'll get started. So this is Dan Kinsey. Thanks for jumping on today. We're going to keep this to an hour. I'm going to go through some part of this as a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll jump in and actually see some working product. I like to do this kind of as PowerPoint. We have a lot of products. So for people to differentiate what our products do, I kind of need to explain this somewhat in text, and then I'll jump into some products, show you how the product works. I know we have some of our existing customers on that kind of use this as education, which is great. For those of you that are new to us, we've been, Kinsey's been around for 30 plus years. We've been in the Lawson community for, I think this is our 20th year. And we build products that we not only do the consulting work in Lawson, net new implementations, upgrades, all that. We also build these complementary products that we think fill some gaps in some of the Lawson products that will help you with security reporting and auditing and that kind of thing. So what we're going to do is, again, I'll go through this product overview, and then we'll do some live demo, and then if we have some time, I'm certainly happy to answer questions. You can submit those on the chat, and if I don't have time before 3 o'clock, I'll stick around longer and answer questions. So I won't read all these slides to you, a little bit about us, but we're not new to this. We do implementations coast to coast. Our consultants are actually very involved in building these applications. You'll see when we get into things like segregation of duties, where we needed our consultants to help us build those rules. And then we also have security consultants as well that helped us figure out what do we need for reporting, what do we need for security auditing reports, what are people looking for. So when we talk about managing risk in Lawson, we're really looking at this from what auditors have kind of come back to us and said, these are the types of reports that our customers need or what we need to see to make sure we don't have situations inside our environment where somebody could create a fraudulent transaction. So they always want to check what the security access rights are. They always want to know who's making changes to security, right? And they want to know who might have access to forms, like who can set up a one-time vendor and then enter an invoice and cut a check to them, because that's something we don't want happening. So our security solutions, we have kind of handled two different sides of Lawson here, is where we get into this reporting side of how your security model is built. And we can do things like segregation of duties, knowing whether or not people have too much access to too many forms, right? We can tell what changes are made to security, and we can certainly report on it. The other side of that is our transaction solutions. So now this is, we have to assume at this point, if they can get into the forms and process transactions, that the security is set so they have access to those forms. We don't know what the rules are. It might be inquiry only, could be changes and adds. Regardless of what it is, we're going to track that activity. So on the security side, we're only checking your security model as nothing with what the user is doing day to day. On the transactional side, now we're actually capturing the real data with inside Lawson. So every transaction they're processing, I can audit. I can tell you what the before and after value was on any form in Lawson. If you're tracking inquiries, we have a lot of customers concerned about who's looking at information, especially on the HR side. We also audit all the inquiries, so I can tell you who looked up a specific employee record. We have this at two levels. We have what's called our activity monitor, where it's just basically who looked at a certain form, on what day, and what time, and what function code did they initiate, and what was the key to the record, like the employee ID, a vendor ID, that kind of thing. The transaction auditing itself goes into all the data behind that. So if you want to know what field was changed on a journal entry, right? Somebody made a change to the entry, I see that, but what actually changed? The auditing solution on that would tell you what value was changed within that journal entry. So I'll show you how kind of these lay out and how we actually pull the two together. So I won't spend a lot, I won't read these. Again, we'll put the PowerPoint up there too. But security solutions are then pulling against your security repository. So that could be LDAP, or in Landmark it's not, but we'll pull both security reporting for LS, the S3 applications, and for the Landmark applications. So that's going to say, what kind of access does a user have? Exactly what forms do they have access to, and what's the rule on the form. So it can be as summarized as just user role access, or all the way down to the individual object, like a table and a form and a system code, or a field. Now on the Landmark side, we're doing that at actors, roles, security class, business objects, that kind of thing. Now additionally, off that same set of data that's in your security model, we want to know who's making changes to our security. What those changes are, when they were made, what the before and after values were. We want to know all that. And ideally, we want to set up, on critical forms, we want to set up notifications. So if you want to make sure that, you know, the HR 11, which is the employee master, if that form, if the rules on that form are being changed, you want a notification going out. So we don't have to go in and automatically or manually run reports. We'll send those notifications out if you want them, you know, once a day, once a week, once an hour, whatever you want. So you can set up those schedules and flag those notifications on things you're concerned about. Now, we also do the segregation of duties. Now, with our application, we're going to deliver over 200 policies that we call, you know, best practice policies that come from audit firms. But we've already, what's nice about this, we've already built the rules behind those 200 policies for you. So we've built over 2,200 rules to check to see, is anybody violating these policies? So the example I gave before was, if they can enter a vendor and they can enter invoices and they can cut a check, that's a problem. Well, we know that policy. Now we'll go out and we've already built behind it all the forms, the places you can enter a vendor, all the ways you can enter an invoice, and the different ways you can process checks. So we've built those rules behind it. So when we install this application, we can tell you right away, is there an issue with your security model? Can somebody process a transaction that might be a problem for you? Now, along with that goes to, boy, if we've had those problems, how do we fix them? So we have a couple ways of looking at that, and we also do security modeling. So this is where we'll allow you, and this is all on the security side, to do kind of a what-if scenario, to kind of simulate what's going to happen. If I change on a specific form, if I change a rule, how many people does that impact? Tell me what security changes happen to these people then, right? If I add a form to a security class, if I add a role to a user, what impact does that have on that user? All those types of changes that you would do in security will simulate the report. This that user's going. On top of this, so D report will connect back to change these policies. So we don't want you to make a change and figure out what the impact is on the road. We want to give you the ability to see that up front, see if it still adhere to the segregation duties, and see how it works. I'm going to pick up, in case we're having problems with my audio, which we might be, I'm going to pick up my receiver and see how that goes. So that's on the security side of what we're doing with just within, this is it's a transaction, but it's the security. So let's look at the transaction side, right? So now what we're doing is we're actually processing transactions in Lawson. So there are rules that you'll have the ability to build behind this. And so what we're doing is we're capturing every transaction real time in Lawson. And we're not reading logs off Lawson. This is all handled as the transactions are being processed. We're running it through filters, which are your rules, and we're collecting just the data you want to see. So if you want to audit everything on a specific user, you set that up as a rule. You give it the user ID. We'll track everything that user does. And if you just want to see their changes, we can filter it out to say, just show me the changes they made. You can also do that on any form. So, you know, there's about 7,000 forms in Lawson. So in that case, you'd be able to specify the forms or just a system code. You can say all HR forms or all PA forms, and we'll give you all the inquiries, the changes, the adds, the deletes, anything that happened in Lawson. So in many cases, you're restricted to about 25 of these in Lawson now. We'll open up all 7,000 forms, or we'll just say audit everything a particular person does. Now, on top of that, we actually give you the ability to, you can run, these are exclusive products, so you can run one without the other. So we have a lot of clients that have just our monitoring tool. And what we're doing there is basically just keeping a summary of what's happened on the transaction. So now it's, what I mentioned before was the person, the date, the time, the form they went into, the function code they initiated, and I'll show you some of the screenshots and what they looked at, what was the key to the record. I don't know the data behind it, I don't know what they changed, but what I do know is who was in that transaction and who did that work. Now, with that type of information, then we can connect that to your security model. And so when you're looking at how do I make my model more secure, we can actually measure and connect what the usage is to how the security is set. So we'll go out and have the ability to look at where users have access that they're never using those forms. and then start making adjustments to the model, saying, boy, if they never use anything in asset management and I've given them that security class role, maybe I can take that away from them. Or if they're only doing inquiries, maybe I can do is change their access to inquiry only on those forms. But you'll have that type of data now to look back and compare to your security model to figure out, can I tighten down or lock down my security a little better? Now, also with that data, and there's a lot of things you can do and you'll find you can do with the data we monitor. When you start getting transactions or even at the summary level, the activity monitor, there's just so many critical areas that we can use that data for. So in SOD, when we look at, we now have we have a person that violates an SOD policy because of the way their access is set. What we don't know is, are they actually using any of the forms that are causing the violation? So maybe they can enter vendors and maybe they can enter invoices, but maybe what we find out is they never do enter invoices. They go into vendor maintenance, but they've never used invoice entry. Well, if I'm just looking at their SOD policies, that's a violation. But if I look at their actual usage, why not assign that back or combine it back with their violations, and I'll tell you whether or not they're using that or not, and whether or not that's going to be an issue. So we have ways of highlighting for you critical access. So in cases where, in situations where they're not actually using it, in either the forms, what they violate, will give you an indicator. When they violate maybe a form on one side, maybe vendors but not invoices, then we'll give you another indicator. And so when they're violated on both sides, then we'll give you maybe a red flag and say that's one maybe you want to look at. So the remediation product, and this is how all the solutions we have, kind of how we tie them together. We'll pull together your SOD reporting with the modeling, with the listener or activity monitor data and your security model and say, and I'll show you a little bit of these screens. All right, this is where you probably have your highest degree of risk because these policies are being violated and the people are actually using the forms on both sides of that violation. And we'll pull that together and show you that. So let's take a look at some of these screenshots. And these are some of the areas, and I won't read all this, that we've addressed that auditors have asked us to and clients have asked us to regarding really what they're looking for when they're looking at all these products. So we'll have clients that only start with, they'll get security reporting and security auditing. Then later they'll add on activity monitor. What's nice about our applications is that they can all run standalone, but once you start building up that library of our products, they also all connect. So I can drill from my SOD reports on where the violations back to my security reporting to see what kind of access or what those roles are, what those users are. There's all ways to connect between our apps. So the main things we're providing are what you're going to need. User access reports, right? Who has access to what? How are my roles built? How are my security classes built? Who's making changes to my security? Kind of all that stuff I just talked about before. So I'll go through a few of these and then we'll jump into, there'll be about, 10 or 15 of these slides and we'll jump into some products. So you can get maybe see it a little better and get a better indication. So we get into security reporting. This is the dashboard just for the LS security reports. Landmark is different. So you're going to have users, roles, security classes. The first three are your primary pillars of what we're looking for. There's a lot of things we do in there, right? So it's not just user access. It's what are user attributes. It's what are users' identities. It's, can you give me the disabled users? Auditors a lot of times want to know if you disabled a user, I want to know a list, I want to see a list of all your disabled users. If you have HR payroll, we can reach in and look at the employee file, tell you users that still have an active login to Lawson that have been terminated, right? So we give you those reports. So it's the security reporting dashboard isn't just what's in LDAP and what am I just reporting out for what users have access. We also try to give you some things to not only improve your model, but things auditors want to have too. So when I look down the left-hand side under the users, again, it's kind of hard to see, and I'll give you a bigger screen later, but it's, it's users that are active but terminated. It's users that are active but they're not employees of the organization. So maybe a consultant that has a login, they're not an employee. Auditors want to know that list, right? So that's where these have come from. The roles and security classes are what you think, right? It's what's the structure of a role? What are the security classes in it? How is the security class built? What are the objects that are in it? There's also orphans, right? So I build a security class and never assign it to a role. I build a role and never assign it to a user. What are those things that are out there? And then the last two things I'll get into later on what we do. The statistics data is just some of the metadata behind the things when you're trying to research what function codes are on a form. Can you show me that? The listeners at Activity Monitor, show me all my activity going on in the system. But I'll come back to that a little bit. And then when you run a report, it comes out, these are all grid-based reports that come out in the browser, Chrome, IE, Firefox, whatever you want to use. They're all exportable to Excel, they're all PDF. You can save them as favorites. So we allow you to, on all of our products, we allow you to save them, save favorite reports, set up notifications, email off automatically, whatever control, different levels of access you give people. But you're going to get, kind of what you'd expect, role security class forms. We'll always give you the available function code on a form and then the rule assigned to it. So what we found with, unlike LAUA where you just assign function codes, and early LS9 where you assign function codes, now you can do all access, all inquiry, but all access might be on a form that only has inquiry capabilities. So we want to be able to show you what the available function codes on that form are, even if the rule might say all access. And you can see all the types of things I can do here. And I'll show you how the grouping, sorting, filtering, all that does. So that's one way we do reports. Now we also have what we call a security analyzer. And this does a couple more things specifically, and again, you'll hear me say the word auditors a lot because that's a lot of the reason people put in our product, quite honestly, because they get audit requests and we can solve those problems for them. So what the analyzer does, one, it comes out in Excel and PDF, so you can just email this off to your whoever needs to see this. Two, it does this thing where we resolve that access conflicts that you might have in your model. So if you work with LSA at all, you'll know that what Lawson the guideline will go through is that the least restrictive access, the rule on a form, actually gets access to that form. So probably a poor way of putting it, but if a user has all access through one method and they have inquiry only through another method, the least restrictive, which is all access, is going to override the inquiry. So what we found in a lot of models is that the users have more than one way to get to a form, and if I just hand over a report to an auditor that shows all those methods, they don't really know how to resolve that conflict. In reality, Lawson will even roll some together, and I'll show you how that works. But on here, what we see, we're going to deliver for you in Excel the users you want to see, so you get columns for every user, so you can line up hundreds of users side by side if you want, and then whoever is reviewing this report can just kind of go down the page and look at the critical forms and what kind of access. Now, if I blow this screen up for you a little bit here, if I look at these two, AC121 and AC123, you'll notice out to the left there's plus marks, and this is just in Excel where we've done grouping. If I ungroup these, what you're going to see here is AC121 is on rows 286 to 290. So the budget calculation. So what I've done is I show you a single line without a role in a security class and say this is the level of security that user is going to get. So if I go back a screen here, this user, you see no role security class, is going to get ACDI, and on this form they're going to get all these function codes. Now if I expand this, what I'm seeing here is that on their individual security classes and roles that are assigned to them, they have ACDI a couple places through the AC budgets class, and they have this IJMPR. Well, what Lawson's going to do is they're going to roll those together. So the user's access is actually going to be what you see right here. That's the level of access they're going to get. If I look at the one, the same column, B. Thomas, right below, you'll see I have a couple ways I can get to AC123 as all access, and another way I can get there is just with some inquiry capabilities. Well, the all access is going to override it. So in this case, that user is going to have all access. We resolve that conflict for you, and we'll tell you, whoever's looking at this report, that's the level of access they're going to get. So you don't have to figure out what it's going to be. But if you want to figure out or understand how we got to that point, you just expand the box and the plus mark on the left, and you'll see all the different paths that user could get to that form. Oh, and I think I highlighted the bottom too. You'll see we do this for tokens, tables, fields, element groups, tabs, everything. So we're pulling all that data out for you. So that's a couple of ways we report on the regular S3 Lawson security. Then we get to the landmark side, right? So this is a little different, and what we're pulling out is actors, right? So actors, if you've worked with landmark security, you'll know what we're talking about here. But we're gonna pull apart what Lawson calls that LPL, the Lawson programming language, and we're gonna break that up so we can give you the business classes from the executables from the modules separate, or you can see it all as one. And you're going to have the same kind of functionality you'd have with our other reports where you can filter, sort, group, do all that kind of thing. Now, one thing we do on both these reports, and you might have seen it on the feature list, is we do historical reporting and comparisons. So not only can you save reports and have the rules saved and just run them on demand, you can also save snapshots of your security at any point in time and even have that scheduled so that every quarter we grab a snapshot of your security and we save it. That allows you to go back and run reports on any point in time, snapshot, or compare back to those reports. So if you want to know, how does my security differ now from what it was 6 months ago, if my snapshot is from 6 months ago, I'll highlight out for you either user role changes, user role security class changes, security class object changes. Any one of our queries you can compare and we'll tell you what's different. So if the security class changed, if the rule on an object changed, if the role assignment to a security class changed, any of those, we'll tell you what's different between your two models. So when you're seeing that on the left-hand side where we see historical reports and comparisons, that's what we're doing. Either run based on how it existed at that point in time or compare your current security to how it was at that point in time. And there's no limit to the number of those snapshots you can keep. Right? So Landmark is going to work the same way as the S3 reports, only it's just going to have a little different data. So now we're still on the security side. So now we get into security auditing. Now this is every change made to the security model. This is a capability within Lawson now. So if you don't have that turned on, and a lot of people are apprehensive because historically some of the logging in Lawson caused problems, it's not a problem. We have 100 customers probably running this product that we use Lawson's tables. So we actually, what we'll do is we'll pull the data out at night of what Lawson is collecting, and then we really just improved on the reporting. So our comparisons of what it was before, what it was after we put together for you. We'll do things where you can set up notifications. So if somebody makes a change to a form and you want to get notified about it, we'll do historical. So you can go back as far back as you kept your data and you can run reports on any time access to AP10 was changed or any time a role on Dan Kinsey was changed. You'll have that historically. So this ability to create email notifications, critical alerts, historical reporting, all that kind of stuff is what we're giving you, as well as the ability to drill into the rest of our applications. So on this screen, anything you see in blue, if I want to know, give me all the objects that are in AC Analysis IO, I can just drill into reports and get you that. If I drill on AC 32.1, I can tell you every security class that lives in. So that's one of the touch points. If you don't have our reporting, you still have this, but you'll also get all the touch points between them and the ability to drill around as you add applications. So the auditing here is not auditing of transactional data, it's what's changed in security. That's what we're giving you here. I don't know if I have don't know if I had another screen there or not. Now we get into SOD, so segregation of duties. Talked about this a little earlier. Okay, so we deliver these 200, I think we're over 200 now, maybe 240 policies, and we have well over 2,000 rules, and we've built these in for you. Now you can modify these, you can add as many new ones as you want. We build them all at the form level. So I'm checking AP 160 and AP 150. You can build as many as you want at class, at different levels, right? Role levels, tables, system codes, security classes. So if you just want to build a new policy that says you can't be an AR supervisor and an AP supervisor, just build a policy and put those two roles in it. And if anybody ever gets those two roles, we'll tell you. And it could be a role in another security class. Maybe you don't want an AP manager to be able to have check processing. So I'll make sure if the AP manager ever has the ability to cut checks, then we'll flag that as an SOD violation. We don't care in the model what you compare to each other. We just build all of these based on the form because every client we walk into has the same 7,000 forms, so we know what the rules should be. Now, in our case, we decided that it has to be more than inquiry only. So if a user only has inquiry capability on a form, that's not a violation to us. Right? So they have to have some kind of add, change, delete. But like the rest of our applications, you can set up notifications on these. So if somebody changes the security model that might impact and cause now an SOD violation, just once a night, run an SOD report checking your critical policies. And if somebody goes into violation because of a security change, you'll get a notification. You can kind of see on the screen, we break this grid into a left side, right side. So what this is saying is that policy 152, you see the description of the policy here, review authorized, I went too far. Review authorized sign checks conflicts with initiate checks. So the way we've built this is if a user has access, you can kind of see right here to AP 155 or 56 or 160 or 161, and they have access to 150, that's a problem. Now, they don't have to have all of the 4 on the left. They have to have any one of the 4 on the left and AP 150. So in this case, we're doing 4 rule checks against 1 policy. In some cases, we're doing literally 80 rule checks against 1 policy because there's a lot of different ways you can do things. And that's the way. So in this case, this user has AP 160. They have all access, and they have all access to AP 150. So it's a violation. So we flag those. Then this is the deeper dive into just telling you where the problem is. Now we're going to figure out how do we fix these things. So the indicators here are, if we build this grid, all your users, all your policies. So you scroll left and right and up and down on this. And the green tells us that's where we have a violation. If the cell is empty, then that user is clean on that policy. If it's green, they're violating the policy, but they're not using any of the forms. So in that last example, that user maybe never used AP 150 or AP 160, so they violate, they're green. If they're yellow, that tells us that they use at least one of those 2 forms on one side of that formula. So maybe they use AP 150 and they don't use 160. Well, okay, they're in violation. They're not doing any harm because it's only a concern if they use something on both sides. So we'll flag those yellow so you know they're actually using it. The red is an indication then of somebody using a form on both sides of the grouping that tells us, okay, we got to look at these because this is kind of where our highest degree of risk is. Now, when you run these, we allow you to filter down. You can rate your policies, and we'll allow you to filter on that rating. So when you build your own or when you use ours, you can go in and say, we have 1 to 5-star ratings. So you can say, these 15 policies are my 5-star rated policies. And so what I want to do is I want to see if I have anybody that's red on a critical policy. And the grid will get restricted down, or you can just work within that part of the grid. Within this application, and I don't know if I have time to demo that, we use our modeling application to then come back and say, okay, what if I did this guy was on AP 160. What if I changed it to inquiry only? Would that solve my problem? What if I moved that security class from that role? What if I removed that role from that user? What if I added this role to that user? It's all of that simulation that I can do within this application that will come back and say, yeah, you know what, if you did that, that fixed the policy. But we also show you the impact on anybody else. So if you were to, it's not as simple as just saying, I'm going to change AP 160 to inquiry, because that may impact 10 different people. Well, if that's the case, we're going to say, okay, you can make that, and that's going to fix your problem, but now these other 10 people that you may have wanted to have it, they're also inquiry only, because that's the way that it rolls up in the model. So we just don't change just one in isolation. We're always going to tell you what the impact on the rest of the users in the system would be if you were to make that change. And that's the way all of our modeling works. That's kind of the biggest, challenge on making changes is how many people are impacted by this change. Well, we want to show you that before you do it. So the modeling kind of, a bunch of stuff here, we have multiple things that we do in modeling. Some is just at the object level, like a form or a table. Some is at the role level. Some is at the security class. We do comparisons to see if you have redundancy in your roles, redundancy in your security classes. Where are the differences? There's a whole bunch of stuff we do on the modeling. And we built that standalone and realized we can bring all that into play with our SOD remediation, and if we can then potentially help people, fix those SOD violations where people can still do their job, but we don't have these critical violations being showing up on our reports. So going back to the start of the presentation, that's the left side, right? That's the whole security side, everything you just saw there. I've never looked at a transaction here yet. That's just the left side of the equation, except where SOD remediation color-coded and brought it in. But so this is the monitor. This is kind of the summary level of the transaction auditing. So you can see down the left-hand side the data that we keep, right? I got a list here. And so like everything else, there's a lot of ways you can filter, group, email, export reports. You can do all that. If the form, in fact, is one you're auditing and you have our transaction auditing, you get a little audit icon out to the right. You click on it. It launches our auditing application, and it says, okay, you're looking at a change record. Here's the data that changed. But at least at this level, I can tell you the user, the form, you see the function code, the date and the time, and the key to the transaction. If it was, you see HR 11 down at the bottom, it's company 1, employee 101, employee 100. They're just next and previous, and there's a change record in there. But I can filter this down and say, just give me all the changes to HR 11.1 made by Lawson, and it just pulled me up a list. And I can do that over a date range. So I'll show you a little bit about the power of this tool, but this is the kind of data. This is exactly the data. There'll be up to 5 keys here. There's only 2 in this one, this example, of this data that we're tracking. But it's everything, everybody, everything done through what's called a DME or an AGS call. So it's everything to do with MS add-ins. You do updates to that, we'll pick all that up. If you got a process flow, we'll pick up that. Anything done through Lawson's standard APIs. So the deeper level then is when we actually look at the data that's on that form. So again, I'm not going to read this to you, but we're picking up inquiries, changes, deletes, anything. We actually grab all the data. Now, in this example here, I've actually asked it to say, only show me what changed on that record. So what I did is here, and I came out, I clicked on this More button, it expanded it, and I can see that I had a GL, it's a GL journal entry, right? Yeah, the GL changed from $50 to $65, right? And I saw the whole value of the transaction changed. So I can see the actual change that was done on the line item on that particular journal transaction. Now I could see everything on that transaction if I told it to show me all data, not just the data that changed. In this case, for the screen, it was easier to show just the data that changed. But there's a lot of ways I can do wildcard and save reports on this as well. So maybe I'm just looking for changes made by a person during a certain date, and I want that emailed off. Again, same kind of capabilities as the other products where you can set up reports, save reports, send off notifications, or just go in and drill through your data to figure out, who's been changing or looking at what information and what in fact did they see, what was on the screen. If somebody did an inquiry on a screen, I'll show you every piece of data they looked at when it was on, when they pulled up that and did an inquiry on that record. Right. So that's the 30-minute overview of what all those products do. So since we have some time here, I'll drag this over, and I trust you can see that. Let me just make sure. Guy, I have you unmuted. Do you see that screen okay?
I can.
Okay, good. So I'll start with a couple of things here on the security side. So I'll go into security reporting. Now here's where I can pick, we'll set this up if you have 2 environments, 3 environments, 4 environments, doesn't matter to us. No licensing different. If you have a production, a dev, and a test, most of our customers have 2, some have 3, some have 4. And we'll set this up to work with all their different environments. And there's no additional license or anything to do that. So I'll pick production, and I'm going to pick which profile I want. Now that's how it's built inside your security model. We're not just picking up your forms profile, we'll pick up Gen and your environment profile and Logan and RM. You can report against all those as well. So hopefully you can see this okay. So down the left-hand side, you see the same thing that we saw in the screenshot, right? So I'm not going to go into all these, but let's say I take something like user role security class form, or maybe you're just looking at user role. So if I want to click quick user role report, I'll just drop this down, and I see users and I see roles. We have what's called grouping. So if I group this by user, all of a sudden I have a quick count of the number of roles. So if I want to see H. Roberts has 9 roles, here's the 9 roles. I'm like, well, what's in the financial role? Well, I can right-click and say, tell me the security classes that are in financial role. It drills down through the model. And I would say, okay, if I want to drill further here, I could drill down to all the objects that are in FSS security class. That just opens different sheets here in my browser, so I can always close that out and go back. Additionally, I could say, you know what, there's a role. We're trying to figure out everybody has a role. Well, I'm going to sort it by role. I'm going to drag role up here. So now I'm just flipping it upside down and looking at it a different way. I don't need to go out and run another query. Now I can see that AC Accountant has 8 users tied to it. There's the 8 users. So I can look at the user role user. Now, we can do this everywhere. So I can flip your entire model upside down and say, show me from a form level, climb the ladder up, and show me who has access to that form. But I just want to give you the form, right? And show me, by the way, on the way, show me every security class it belongs to and every role it's assigned to and every user that has it. So this type of grouping, filtering is in all of our queries. Now, I could have come back here and said, I don't really want everybody. What I want to do here is, it equals this person, starts with, contains, or advanced. you'll get a list of your users. You can just add users across. There's different ways of doing this, and just run that report. Same thing on the roles. I can say advanced. I can pick certain roles. I'll take them all, and I can run that report. So that filtering capability is there for everything we're going to do. So every query has that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And so I'll show you if I were to look at user role form security class, again, same kind of thing, right? So I got the filters. I'll run this. And now just to get a user report, that's as simple as just clicking by user. I could just export this, but if I go user, and then you can do all your sorting, whatever you want to do in Excel. But I can do a user role security class. So I see A Davis has 4 roles, AC Accountant has 9 security classes, AC Budgets has 10 forms, and there's my security, and there's the rule that I have assigned. So pretty simple just to get to what kind of access does this user have? What are their roles? What security classes? Now, a lot of people like to flatten this out. And so what they do is they come down here and they say, just give me the user. Well, actually, let me flip it upside down and flatten it out. So I'm going to go by form, user. So take out, I don't care what role it's in, I don't care what security class it's in. I just care about critical forms. Now, maybe what I want to do is we can do filtering on any column. So I had the filtering of the data that I pulled in. Now I want to filter once I'm working with my data set. So I'll say, let's go ahead and put in HR 11. All right, so I have HR 11, 1, 2, and 3. And I see here that it's grouped by form user, so I must have 3 users that have access. And I do. So I see S. Christian has 4 ways they can get to this form. There's the 4 ways. And I can see I have some conflicting access here. So I have an all access, I have an inquiry, I have a conditional logic, which is probably for self-service, and it looks like it is. And I have an all access. So all access wins. But I can see every method that they can get to this, either the security class and the role of what's assigned to that user. Right? So we can filter on any one of these columns once we're in the application, or once we're in the grid has been populated, or I can just filter on what data I want to pull in. Now you also probably saw this run historical comparison. I won't do, well, I'll go back here. I can run one probably from here. The user role, if I want a role comparison, I'll say, you know what, go back and compare it to how it existed in 2015. So this isn't who made the change, when it was made, it's just a point in time. How does it look now compared to how it looked then? So when you're looking for problems or you're looking for extra users, maybe a user has less capability and trying to figure out why, you can go back and run a comparison. They used to have this level and now they have this level. Instead of trying to filter through, you know, pages and pages of security change reports, we'll just tell you what's different. So I can come up here and see that these have been added. So A. Davis, these roles have been added for A. Davis. These roles have been removed. What I have is 2 columns here. So user, full name, you see role description, that the C is current data, H is historical. So I can now see what's happened for these users from the point in time that I ran this, which was back to whatever it was, 2015. I also could have just, you know, I just want to work with this user. This is the one I want to figure out what's going on. And we'll give you both sides. You can say, okay, I added these roles to that user, we deleted these roles from the user. So that's what's happened since that point in time. Now, you can do that for virtually every one of these. There's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, you can do this for virtually every one of these. So I'm not going to go through all these because you kind of see how this technology works. Right? You can drill up and down through the model. If you even start with role security class, and I run this, and you run your roles, I group it, and I'm like, okay, here's AC clerk, and I'm going to say, well, who has this? I can drill up to the user. I can always climb a layer up. There's the users that have that assignment. Now I can actually go down and say, you know what, I want to know everything about B. Thomas. Every table, you see I get fields, I get hidden forms, or hidden fields, I get tokens, I get tables, I get everything. I can sort it by the type, and now I have all the types. I can group it by the type, right? So I want to know every field that has logic on it for B. Thomas. So that's the kind of thing we're doing on these reports. So we do have all objects. Now a lot of these are built behind or built using forms versus categories and fields and that data elements and that kind of thing. But you can always get to them on the all object query. So role has all objects, security class and users both have all objects. So that's the base security reporting that really for security administrators. A lot you can do with those. And again, I didn't show you all the features. You can save reports, you can email them, You can export them to PDF, export them to Excel. You can do all that kind of thing. When I get over here, when we talked about the activity monitor, the listener, so now I'm back into what we're actually, our users were in the application, what work they were doing. And I can go look at user form summary. Now, the reason we put it on here, one, it gives us the ability to use this grid technology, and we can, oh, I didn't want summary. That's nice to know, but that's just how many times they've used any particular form, and I can drill to the detail if I want to see it. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to the detail, and you'll see all the different filters. So I can filter on a user. I can look for a particular form. I can look at a date range, right? I can look for any keys I want to look at. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And when I get this data populated, you'll see that I have kind of what the screenshot showed before. I get the user, I get the form, the function code. Maybe what I care is I only really care about changes. That's all I want to look at. All right, so here's the changes. Now I want to do it by form. So I'm going to sort, I'm going to group it by form. All right, and did I sort it by form? Yeah. So maybe now I just want to go down to HR 11.1, and I want to know every change that was made. So here I can now see the user. It looks like it's all, oh no, there's a couple F. Nelsons in there. I can see when the date and time was changed. I can see the record that was changed. If I had our transaction auditing, I got the icon out here, I can actually go in and see the record that actually, I can see the data behind what was changed. Right? But because I can now filter this, group this, sort it, do anything I want with it, I can look at things at the form level. I can look at the user. I could put the user there and say, oh, Lawson's done 110 transactions. F. Nelson's only done 17. Wonder why that is. Well, actually, I had to clear all my filters. Now I see the number of full transactions here because I had filters on those. But Rogers just processed 6. So you can build all kinds of things here. We even do what's called cross-key searches. So if you're looking for everything that happened on a certain employee or a certain vendor, so if I have like vendor 118, I think I have some of that data in here. If I have 118, the key on the vendor file is going to be different than the key on the invoice file. So it's going to find any form out there that and I could have restricted this to a user, that vendor 118 has been used on. So I can see it's been used on AP10, AP16, AP20. I don't know if I have any more. And I can then filter, these are all AP20s, but they're all vendor 118. And again, I can filter this down to just show me the changes. And so these are all the changes to something regarding vendor 118. So if you're looking for one of those transactions where did somebody go in and change the terms code and then cut a check, or did somebody set up a new vendor and then do an invoice to them, I don't have to know which key in Lawson. I got to figure out what it is because that's dictated by Lawson. Just give us what you're searching for, and we'll search all the keys to see if anybody worked on that transaction. So that's kind of what we're doing. Well, it's exactly what we're doing in this detailed query for the activity monitor. Along with that, you'll see over here where we can do this last active. You might have gotten a question from your auditor, I need a list of the last time somebody logged in. Well, we took that a step further. They could log in and not do anything. But what we discovered, what the real question sometimes ends up, what was the last thing they did? Because that's kind of where the last time they were logged in. So we'll give you based on the activity we have, we'll give you a list of the last thing that they did. We'll give you one row, the last record, the form they were on, the key they worked on, the date and the time, same data, but we just restrict it down to the most recent record per person. The user no activity is we'll compare your entire user list that comes out of LDAP to our activity file, and we'll tell you those users that have access to the application that have not used it at all. We have no activity for them. That's obviously only as good as when the product gets installed, but track it over 6 months, we can tell you everything somebody's done over the past 6 months or if they've not been active at all. The user security versus activity, this is where we're marrying up. What are they doing versus what do they have access to? If they have access and they're never using it, I want to know. And so that query just kind of uses our user form, user role security class form query and adds the number of times that form has been used out to on the right-hand side for a user. So if you look at these, it's the same query as the regular security report, only I got that hits column out on the right. So if I want to know, that means 0 means they're never using this. I can obviously go in here and say I want to do something, I want it greater than 0, and I can tell you what they are using. So now it comes back and tells me this user, in fact, is using these forms. And if I wanted to see, oh, they've used this 21 times. Now, we know that we can drill from any one of these to other reports. I can also drill here and say, show me those 21 transactions, and here's the 21 transactions processed by that user. So I know now how they're using it, not just that they did use it. And in this case, everything here is an inquiry, right? So okay, even though they have all access, they're only doing inquiries. Maybe they only need inquiry, but I've given them full access. That's the kind of thing you can do with this type of information. Right? So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're doing here with the secure reporting, the listener activity monitor. There's a whole bunch of things we can do with that data. Now, if I go home here, we'll go back to LS reporting. The analyzer here is what I was saying, where we can, we'll give you a report for the auditor just based on the users that you want on this report. The other thing that's unique about this versus our other reporting is that you only have control over what users go on this report, not the data that shows up for them. What an auditor doesn't want is you have this ability to, as you saw through my filters, I could pick a group of users and then only pick selective roles, and I can hand that over and say, okay, there's everything everybody has to the system. Well, that's not necessarily true because you filtered something out. They don't want you to have that ability. This report takes that away. The only thing you can do here is either select a group of users based on who belongs to a certain role, or you can just say, I just want, these 5 users on the report. And that comes out in the Excel document. I could probably run one real quick. That I showed you where you have you have a user in every column. Resolves that least restrictive access criteria or parameter and gives you a report. If I can pull it over here. Here's a report by user. Let me go to down here at the bottom. I go to tokens, and I get the roles they have up here. That's everything that user has assigned to them. And you'll see the user in the column. And I scroll down and I see the level of access they have. We actually do something else here. So if you're using securable types, a securable type overrides all other security in the system. So if I have a securable type on tokens, it doesn't matter what's in that user's column. They're going to get override. They're going to have all access if that's the rule behind the securable type. Well, we got to tell somebody that because a lot of people don't even know they have those in use. So if it's highlighted here, like you see H. Roberts over here to the right is not, but these other users are, because it's a securable type, so it doesn't matter there's a condition, it doesn't matter that it's inquiry, their securable type says all access, they get all access, right? So it's just important to know. But you'll see we have all the other things down here at the bottom, elements, fields, field conditions, product lines, programs, all this kind of stuff, right? So maybe more detail you want to give them. We have some people that turn this over to their auditors. We have some people who just want it internal for their review because it's an easy way to line up your users side by side and just go down to the form and just see, oh, this is the one I was worried about. What's their level of access? I want to see how they get it. I expand it, and I can see here it's inquiry only. They only have it one way. It rolls up to inquiry only. But this is just part of our standard security reporting. It comes with that product. We just wanted to make sure if you have to turn reports over to your auditors, one, you have 2 different ways of generating them now, so there's kind of a check and balance between them. And the second being, the auditors are comfortable that you cannot manipulate that data. Now, when we actually produce this document here on the analyzer, we can give that to you as straight as a PDF and Excel, as opposed to just Excel, so that auditors also don't like the fact that you might, understandably, you could actually take an Excel document and change it. So they want to have a comfort level that the PDF matches the Excel document. But our customers then just turn both of them over because that's an easier document for them to work through than a PDF document. But then it can validate it against a PDF. So that's I'm not going to get in much to the modeling and stuff here because that just takes too long to get into here. But it's just some of what we use in our other products. The landmark, as we talked about, here's your landmark reporting. I can do the same kind of things here. I have snapshots. I have comparisons with different product lines or profiles, excuse me, and I can look at active role assignments, right? Or maybe I want to look at role, I don't know, role security class. So if I look at role security class, it's just a list. I can go to role. Here's all the classes. I can take that out and go to class. It's the same technology. Here's all the roles. So that's everywhere that that particular security class lives. Now, we do some other things there too. You might have seen back here, we do these, if I go home, for both your LS and for your landmark, we do these comparisons so that if you want to compare a role to every other role to see what's different, we'll do that. A class to every other class. That gets a little more critical in the landmark because landmark comes built with these roles and security classes, and you really can't change them. What you can do is you can copy them and modify them. So people start copying them and modifying them, then they don't know what's the difference between the base one and the one they've made. Our comparison will compare them to each other, and we'll tell you exactly what's different between them. So if somebody walks into a new security person walks in and has no idea what the changes were done, we can go back and compare your current classes to the standard delivered classes, and we'll tell you down at the object level what's different. And that's what those do. Now, when we talk about segregation of duties, this is back on the left side of my presentation. And I'm not going to have much time because I want to, we've got to wrap this up. But you'll be able to go in and run these reports. We do some modeling here. You'll see pre-saved reports out here. I can run financial policies, run report. We're checking every policy you've got built into this report. It could be all 200 of them. It could be 20 of them, whatever the ratings were. And we'll check everybody in the system, and we'll tell you who has violations to those policies. So you don't have to run one report for every policy. We're checking everything at one time. And there's a lot of different ways we'll give it to you. But if I just look at Frank Nelson, asset management, I see a policy was violated. I see why, because the rule says if you have AP or AM 250 or AM 252, he has both. Or and you have 145 or 40.1, you have both. This is a big problem. But again, I can drill to all my reports from here. There's a lot of things I can do within this grid, but we'll tell you where in fact the violations are. And then this was, if I went back to the SOD remediation grid, this is where we're telling you, say last 60 days, I'll pick this profile. And here's the color grid that's going to come up and say based on activity, and I only asked for activity the last 60 days, where do I have problems? And maybe I just want to look at 5-star policies. There's my 5-star policies. I got a bunch of problems with my 5-star policies, right? I won't go deep into this, but there's a number of things then on the modeling side that says, okay, here's how you could potentially correct that. And the last thing, as long as I got one more minute, we talked, security. I don't know if we got into security reporting. I showed you the screenshot of that a little bit. You can get in here. You can run wildcards. I want to know everything that impacted Frank Nelson's a user. Tell me every change that might have impacted F. Nelson. Okay, there's a bunch of changes that affected this user. I want to see what they are. Oh, here's a role change. See what this one is? That's also a role change. These are all role changes. I probably have one in here that maybe is here's a password change. So I can look on a user that's impacted by this. So if it was an attribute, or if it was an identity that was changed, or it was a role, whatever it will be. Or I might want to go out and look at a specific object. So maybe what I want to do is I want to do a wildcard on every time HR 11. Show me everything that's changed on that. And we'll just search for everything that might have impacted HR 11 and the before and after value. And again, you can drill to, if you want to know what's in HR setup, I can drill to the report. The advanced searches give you the ability to say, I want to know everything done by this security officer within this date range that impacted, this person or was on this object. And you can set up nested logic here as opposed to just a search. Then I'll go out and pull those reports out for you. And then as you see on the left, I can save the report, put it on a schedule, and have it emailed off. It's kind of what I was telling you before. So that's what the security auditing does. Again, that was kind of fast, but I'm out of time. And the other thing was the transaction auditing. So here, this is, and again, I do 1-hour presentations on like each one of these because we can go pretty deep into everything that we do. But if I can do the same kind of wildcard search here, now this is on a transaction base. So if I want to know everything done by Lawson, there's going to be a lot of stuff done by Lawson. Every transaction, this would be everything processed by that user. So I see I have a lot of transactions. Well, maybe I just want to know everything done by Lawson on, I'm going to hold control down, hold shift down, and I want to know it on, let's say, PRO3. And I'm going to now say, you know what, give me a better search. So now, there's everything done on Lawson on PRO3. Well, what else did they do on that date? So I'll hold the date down and Lawson down and say search that criteria. Okay, there's everything Lawson did on that day. Well, maybe really what I want to know is everything Lawson did on that day, every change that Lawson made on that day. So, or how about add? So I'll click on add, and I'll search on that. Only one ad that day. But you can see how I can continue to drill through the data by just holding control down, clicking on certain pieces of information, and we'll build a filter and search that for you. So as you're trying to investigate what got changed, who made a change, what did they do that day, who else made a change that day, you know, if I want to know anything else happened on anything else going on B31, nope, that's the only thing on B31.1. So I can I can easily, you know, jump from query to query to query just by highlighting a field and doing investigation work to go down to that level. But that's all I got. It's 3 o'clock, so I told you I'd be done at 3 o'clock. I am. We'll skip all this. I'll leave you with this page. Again, I'll put this PowerPoint up on our system, on our website. Guy Henson will probably be following up with you. Keep in mind, every one of these components runs standalone, so you don't have to have one piece to have another. The exception to that is the SOD remediation, because we know you have to have SOD, you have to have the activity monitor, but reporting, SOD, activity monitor, transaction auditing, security auditing, all run on their own. So, you know, if you'd like a follow-up demo with anybody, you know, the rest of your team, if there's anything we can do for you, we'd be happy to set that up. The install is quick, the training is quick. I get that question a lot. It's generally a 3-day install that we do remote. If you had all the products, it could be 1 day if you only have a couple of them. And then the training we do in like 2-hour sessions, and we do those via WebEx unless you're in the Chicago area or one of our consultants kind of near them. But we can do all the training in a couple-hour sessions over a period of, you know, 2 to 3 weeks. With that, it's 3:01. I'm going to let everybody go. But I will stick around. I can unmute this, and I'm happy to stick around and take questions. I just want to make sure that if people have to go, we're out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute right now. Let's see, did that work? That worked. So now everyone is unmuted. So if anybody has a question, I'm happy to hang out for a while and answer anything. I guess I could also look at the chat and see if anything came in that way. There was a question about what training options do we offer in order to effectively maintain and use the solution. So you'll have the WebEx training. We will come on site, but that's a travel expense. Most people don't want to go through. We will do these kind of WebExes with your team, and going through this in usually 2 to 3 hour sessions, and we do multiples of those. Or we have online videos and we have online training manuals. So if you are at, if you're at Kinsey.com /training, Kinsey.com/training has our user guides here and has a library of videos on how to use the products. And these keep growing. I keep adding more videos. And we try to keep, there's some full session videos, so if you want to sit there for 45 minutes on everything, that's fine. If you just want, you know, I don't know how to use historical reporting. You know, it's 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 25 seconds. It's not 2 hours, 25 minutes. Probably ought to put minutes, seconds there so people get that. These are 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 seconds, okay? So those are available. There was a question, if Sam is still on, how does Info Security Services user activity monitor compare to this solution? The little bit we've seen of that, and well, I'll tell you, there's like, we have over 100 Lawson clients. I don't think any of them have it turned on. And from what I've seen, that'll give you the user and the form. It certainly doesn't give you the key to the record. You're never going to get that level of detail as the key to the transaction that was worked on. I also don't know that they do inquiries, but I can't verify that. I've only seen a little bit about what they do. I have seen some user form tracking, but not at the detail level. We're trying to give you something more than you can say how many forms have been used or how many transactions processed. We're trying to give you information on what the person actually worked on. So the key to the record is one of the big differentiators between us and what they're doing. from what I've seen. There may be more. Okay. There's nothing else on the chat, and if nobody has any questions, then I'll stop the recording, and I hope everybody has a great day. We'll hang up on this now, and Guy will get back to you. Thanks for your time.